Let us commend ourselves and each other in all our life unto Christ our God. Worship to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, now and ever, and to the ages of ages. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, one God. Christ is in our midst.
He is and ever shall be.
We are now at the fifth Sunday of the Great Fast, the end of the fifth week. So, to recount, I'm mostly recounting for myself, but for everyone. So like 12 years ago, when we started this church, and we came to last Sunday, the fourth Sunday, which is the Sunday of St. John of the Ladder, who wrote a beautiful 30-step treatise about the ladder leading up to the kingdom of heaven, how to live, in other words. From that time till now, decided that for these two Sundays, St. John of the Ladder and St. Mary of Egypt, the fourth and the fifth Sunday, we would do 2 steps from the ladder. So obviously 12 times 2 is 24. We're on step 24 today. Because at that time, I counted 30 steps if we did one a year. And I would be almost 80 years old. I have no idea if that's going to happen. So 2 steps a year. So God willing, we at least have 3 more years to do it. So, let me just first tell you what the step is for today that we're going to discuss. And we're going to insert our beautiful Mary the Egyptian in there. Step 24. You ready? On meekness. Meekness. Simplicity. Guilelessness. And wickedness. Interesting combination. So first, some thoughts from St. John Climacus. St. John of the Ladder, his thoughts are very profound, and step 24. He says, the light of dawn comes before the sun, and meekness is the precursor of all humility. To be humble, one first must be meek. So let us listen to the order in which Christ, our light, places these virtues. He says in Matthew's Gospel, learn from me because I am meek and humble of heart. Meek and then humble of heart. Therefore, before gazing at the sun of humility, we must let the light of meekness flow over us. If we do, we will then be able to look steadily at the sun. The true order of these virtues teaches us that we are totally unable to turn our eyes to the sun before we have first become accustomed to the light, to be meek. Meekness is a mind consistent amid honor or dishonor. Meekness prays quietly and sincerely for a neighbor, however troublesome he may be. Meekness is a rock looking out over the sea of anger, which breaks the waves which come crashing on it and stays entirely unmoved. Meekness is the bulwark of patience, the door, indeed the mother of love, and the foundation of discernment. For it is said in Psalms, the Lord will teach his ways to the meek, and it is meekness that earns pardon for our sins, gives confidence to our prayers, and makes a place for the Holy Spirit. To whom shall I look, if not the meek and the peaceful, says Isaiah. To whom shall I look, if not the meek and the peaceful? Meekness works alongside of obedience. It guides a community, like a parish. Checks frenzy, curbs anger. It is a minister of joy and imitation of Christ, the possession of angels, a shackle for demons, a shield against bitterness. The Lord finds rest in the hearts of the meek, while the turbulent spirit is the home of the devil. St. Matthew, the meek shall inherit the earth, indeed rule over it, and the bad-tempered shall be carried off as booty from their land. And then he moves from meekness a little bit into simplicity. Simplicity is an enduring habit within a soul that has grown impervious to evil thoughts. And guilelessness is the joyful condition of an uncalculating soul. Honesty is innocent thought, a genuine character, speech that is neither artificial nor premeditated. Innocence is a soul as pure as the day it was created and always concerned for everyone. Malice, so this is where he gets into the last word, wickedness. Malice is honesty perverted, a deluded thought, a lying disposition, perjury, ambiguous words. Malice is a false heart, an abyss of cunning, deceit that has become habitual, pride that is second nature. It is the enemy of humility, a fake penitence, mourning depleted, a refusal to confess your sins, an insistence on getting one's own way. It is the agent of lapses, a hindrance to resurrection, a tolerance of wrongdoing, false grief, false reverence. It is life gone diabolical. Unadorned simplicity is the first characteristic of childhood. As long as Adam had it, he saw neither the nakedness of his soul nor the indecency of his flesh. And this is very special. Good and blessed is that simplicity which some have by nature, but better is that which has been goaded out of wickedness by hard work. The former is protected from much complexity and the passions, while the latter is the gateway to the greatest humility and meekness. There's not much reward for the one, and no end of reward for the other. I need to explain that, and I want to talk about here, before I complete his teaching, I want to talk about St. Mary of Egypt. And, indeed, not only St. Mary of Egypt, but the hope that is in all of us. Because listen to what he says. And, he's not the only teacher of the church that talks about this. He says, if a person is meek by nature, in other words, like, I don't even want to say naturally meek, but just sort of like quiet and unassuming, and also not very brave, something like this, then that kind of meekness really doesn't bring blessings, because that's natural to you. You have to overcome the passions which are in you, and acquire the virtues that are not naturally in you. This is the general teaching of the fathers. If we're going to become perfect, like Christ says, be perfect like your heavenly Father, then we have to figure out what's wrong there. And if it's not, if I am already meek, just to continue to be meek doesn't bring the blessings. But what if I'm not meek? What if I'm arrogant? What if I'm strong-willed, big-headed, love myself, love everything about myself, love everything that I do, etc., then meekness is the beginning, you see, of a new life. It's the beginning of salvation. It's the beginning of the kingdom of heaven for us. So I include myself in that, for sure, for us. Because why? Because by beginning to go down that path and to struggle against my passion for pride, ego, arrogance, whatever, already I'm starting to attract the grace of God and acquire the virtues of which Christ speaks. Let's look at Mary of Egypt. She was first and foremost an arrogant person. I mean, she fell into all these sins, and those who have not read her life, we just read her life again. I think it was like the 37th time in my life we read it liturgically. But more than the sins of the flesh and all of that debauch that she talks about, what was the underlying thing in her life? What's the underlying cause of living kind of life like that? It was arrogance. You see the way she boasted? You see the way she was proud in front of these youths? She said, I made them sin in many, many different fleshy ways. Against their will. It wasn't about money. It wasn't about, I didn't even take the money. No. Against their will. And she was boasting about that. She was laughing about that. You see, this is arrogance. This is like deep pride. proud of my sinful life somehow. Proud of my crazy fallen way I'm conducting my days. You see? So the arrogance is the real main thing which is tied to every other passion. This arrogance, this pride, is definitely tied. The fathers talk about this all the time. The sins of the flesh. You wouldn't want to pamper yourself or comfort yourself or pleasure yourself or indulge yourself unless you loved yourself. This is the key. You see? Arrogance, pride. So, when Mary of Egypt encounters this obstacle to going into the church, what's happening there? Christ says, it's impossible to worship me. You can't fall down in front of me or my holy cross unless you clean yourself of this arrogance. You have to be able to say, you are God, I am not. Lord, I am just like dirt in front of you. And she couldn't understand that at first. Why? Because she was arrogant. She was loving herself. So she went out, and it suddenly came to her when she saw who? She saw the icon of the Mother of God, who is all meekness, all purity, all holiness. She saw her and she said, I know it's nothing. Do you love this prayer that she says? She goes, I realize that it's nothing for one as filthy as me to offer praise to one as pure and as meek as yourself. I know these words don't come as any kind of gift to you. But if you would intercede with your son, basically, so that I could go into the church. She couldn't even go into the church. There was a force holding her out. So if I could just go into the church, here it is. Here's the first sign of meekness. I promise I'll change my life. I promise I'll never do anything really, she's saying, for myself again. And when she made that vow, what happened? She was able then to not only go into the church, but she said it felt like a force was literally the same force that was hindering her from getting in, now was pushing her in, so that she was able to go in and venerate the life-giving cross on the feast day of the Holy Cross. And then, of course, now here's the part where we are, right, my dears? If you try to live a life of meekness, if you try to live a life of humility, the next step, what's going to happen? You're going to be attacked. You're going to, roadblocks are going to come up all around you. She went literally into the desert immediately after that. And she says, you remember? 17 years she fought, and she didn't even see another soul. So it's not like us, who, the devil knows what he's doing with us. He puts some person in front of us. Sometimes it's your own wife. And then, boom, you sin. Right? No meekness. No humility. So it's even harder when you go by yourself. And she went into the desert in hopes of fulfilling that vow. And with a steadfast heart. And she was fasting. What did she eat? A loaf of bread for 10 years, whatever. So, here's the thing. 17 years she's on her face in the desert in tears. In tears. Because those temptations, once they're in there, the temptation for pride, first of all. And she says, and in my pride, I wanted meat. And I wanted, wine. And if it was me, I'd say, I want cheese, So she wanted all of these delicacies. She said, I don't even have water here in the desert. So she was conquering that. But the real issue was all these years that I've pampered and loved and indulged myself, right? They've left a deep impression on my soul. They've left me like a spiritual cripple. So the first 17 years, it's like nothing. 17 years like nothing. So the first 17 years, I fought against that. And she just dismisses it with one sentence. 17 years. So for the first 17 years, I fought against all of these things, And then for the next 30 years, after that, she was able then to start acquiring, grace of getting back. She's back to the level maybe where she was when she was born, with the potential for all holiness and all fulfillment of Christ's teachings. And then she starts rising. To the point where we meet her in the story by Sophronius. We meet her, and she's a miracle worker. She walks across the River Jordan like Christ. How does this happen? How do I have that transformation from laughing at my debauchery and being so in love with that and with me, to, just being totally in love with Christ and ashamed of everything that I've ever done wrong. Totally ashamed, totally broken. How does that happen, that transformation? In that brokenness, she becomes a saint, a miracle worker, a holy person. So read the life if you've never read it. That happens through one word: meekness. Meekness and simplicity and guilelessness. Because after she made that vow, after she made that pledge to Christ and turned her whole life over to Him, she knew what it was going to require. It was going to require steadfastness. How many times do we say, I'm going to start again? I'm going to be new again. I'm going to be new again. But it's the steadfastness. So I suggest to you that it's not just steadfastness in discipline and all that. It's literally meekness. And you hear it a million times. When you're tempted to, speak, especially to speak a strong opinion, be quiet. Don't do it. Like our bishop says, right? Shut up. When you're tempted to be arrogant and proud and filled with ego, do the opposite thing. You can practice meekness without even being a meek person. You could already practice it by simply inviting, Lord, just teach me how to be quiet right now. Just teach me, instead of saying that criticism, that pride thing, I'm going to say something blessed. Did you hear what he said? Meekness is the one who loves their neighbor, who prays for their neighbor. Christ said it, he said, love your neighbor. Love your enemies. He said, even when they're being horrible to you, even when they're persecuting you, to be in love with them, to be meek. You see, you'll never be harmed. Your heart will never be broken. It will never be destroyed, torn in half. Why? Because in my meekness, I just keep my eyes right here on Christ. Right here on Christ. And like the Theotokos, right on Christ and His mother at the same time, and say, nothing can harm me. I won't allow this invader, this foreign disease, to infect me, to infect my heart. Because it's just some words, or it's just some temptation, some thought. So whether it's a person who's tempting me, whether it's a demon who's tempting me, whether it's my own imagination that's tempting me, I have to fight all of that with the sword of meekness. Well, there's your assignment, I guess, for the rest of the life. The rest of the week and the rest of Great Lent. But how about for the rest of life? It's a building block. And look what kind of building block it is. It's already St. John's 24th step. So we have to have done 23 things before we even get to this place. When tempted, don't think of myself. When attacked, don't think of myself. When criticized, don't think of myself. When praised, don't think of myself. Every single time you get a blow like that, and blows can be seemingly good or seemingly bad. Every time I turn to Christ, people say, blah, 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 and you say, glory to God. People say, blah, 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 you say, Lord have mercy. Whatever you need to do to just sort of deflect that in your meekness. Practice it. Practice it. If you practice it consistently enough, you will, do I dare say it, you will become meek. You will be a naturally meek person. That's what he means by the hard work. Meek people who are natural, by nature, they need to work on something else. They have other virtues that they need to acquire. But many people who struggle with this ego thing, they can become meek people through the grace of God, ultimately. But if I practice it, and work at acquiring the grace of God and attract it to myself. I can be a meek person. And just remember, the 25th step is humility. I can move from meekness to real humility. And then I will be like Christ. Let me finish with these last two sentences, I think, that St. John says. So the first is, he's talking about another contemporary of his, Paul the Simple. Paul the Simple. You want to hear a little note about Paul the Simple? Paul the Simple went off to join St. Anthony in the desert after catching his wife in the act of adultery. Now think about what you might experience if that happened to you. Would it be meekness? St. Anthony thought him too old to become a monk, but Paul submitted to the severest discipline with such unquestioning obedience that in a relatively short time he acquired spiritual powers even greater than those of St. Anthony. Paul the Simple. Very simple and very powerful. He says, Paul the Simple, that thrice blessed man, was a shining example to us. He was the measure and type of blessed simplicity. And no one has ever seen or heard or could see so much progress in so short a time. A lapse, a fall, lapse often saves the clever man. Someone who thinks they're so much themselves, very clever. Bringing him salvation and innocence in spite of himself because of a fall that humbles him. Fight to escape from your own cleverness. If you do, then you will find salvation and an uprightness through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. And then this says, if you have the strength to take this step, do not lose heart, for now you are imitating Christ your Master, and you have been saved. Amen.